Greetings, African family. Greetings in the honorable spirit of our great and mighty African ancestors. Welcome to Clear Thinking with Brother Dolani. Welcome to episode 33 of Clear Thinking with Brother Dolani. In this episode, I'll be covering a very significant, a very powerful, and a very important piece of history, and a very dark, a very misunderstood part of our history.
We have to go play a match at 10.
And it have to do with African families who participated, who became accomplished in our enslavement. It's a painful part of the narrative, but one that must be addressed. A very good colleague of mine contacted me, and he shared with me a documentary that was done recently, and it covers some ceremony that took place in Africa with some African chiefs and leaders offering sincere and fervent apologies for the involvement of many of their chiefs and leaders in the enslavement, in transatlantic trafficking of enslaved African. And I felt the sincerity, and I listened carefully, and I said to myself, I know that some of the narrative has been crafted to make the Africans feel like they are primarily responsible for our enslavement. And I want to say this to my people, that we respect the process of atonement. We respect the process of atonement. We respect anything that can bring about healing and reconciliation and restoration with the African family. However, I am aware that the neocolonialists, I'm aware of the colonial and imperialist role in crafting a narrative to make African people feel that we are responsible for our own enslavement, that we in Africa was practicing enslavement on each other, and we had somehow a slavery industry set up in Africa. There was no such thing. We have to be honest. When the European arrived in West Africa, there were no enslavement market. There were no slavery industry. There was no concentration camps. There were no slave dungeons across West Africa when the Europeans arrived. The European came and they built that industry. They built the whole industry of enslavement. They just continue where the Arabs left off in North Africa. The Arabs in North Africa had enslaved many Africans along the northern Sahara and the southern Sahara for quite a long time, a few hundred years, many hundred years before the Europeans arrived. But no indigenous African had any camps enslaving Africans. There was no chattel enslavement on our continent before the Arabs and the Europeans got there. What we are talking about here is a brutal, inhumane genocide and atrocity committed against our people. When the European came, they are responsible for the enslavement of African people. Many leaders were made into accomplices. They were bought, they were deceived, and many of them gladly participated in it. And many of them were traitors to our people and allowed themselves to be used for selfish gains, for trinkets, and we condemn all those leaders. But what you don't hear about is all those who resisted. Many African tribes, our nations, I don't really use that word tribe, our nations of people resisted the enslavement of our people. But you don't hear about those in the narrative. You hear about the one them that was traitorous to our people. And then those are the one that they throw in our face to tell us that our people enslave us. They enslaved, the Europeans enslaved our people in West, Central, and Southern Africa. And they incorporated African leaders in their wicked system, in their criminal enterprise to enslave our people. So, the apologies for those traitors is understandable and is welcome. But I'm not going to lift my foot off the responsibility of imperialism, capitalism, and colonialism. The European nations became enriched from the enslavement of our African ancestors. And many of those who assisted the Europeans in the enslavement of African people themselves became enslaved, themselves became captive and put on those ships and shipped across the world. So the European didn't play. He used what he could use, and he discarded what he couldn't discard. And when you run out of use, he just capture you and send you on the plantation in the concentration camps across the Caribbean and across America, the Americas. So yes, I respect that. I respect the move to reconcile, and we all need to just heal and rebuild our connection with our African people. Now, as an advocate for reparation, I know there's a role for Africa to play in our reparation. Our people in the West will need land. We will need reconnection with our African people and our African culture. There is a role that the nanas, they call them chief nowadays, but we know they are the nana in Africa. They have a role to play in welcoming African people back home to Africa. The leadership, the political leadership in Africa have a role to play in reconnecting African people in the diaspora with the African continent. We're going to need transportation. We're going to need enhanced communication. We're going to need to exchange physical bodies where African people from the diaspora will need to travel to Africa to interact with African people. From the elementary school level all the way up to the university level, the community level, where elders and grandchildren will need to go to Africa. And we need to make the way easy for our people. The leadership in Africa need to make it possible for Africans in the diaspora who want to return to Africa can return to Africa in a very safe and in a very efficient way. And we need to integrate. We need to deal with the issue of African visa and citizenship. We need a continental wide policy to govern the return of African people from the diaspora, especially those who have been enslaved in the last 400 years, 400 to 500 years, to make it possible for those who desire to resettle in Africa, to make the process as easy, as efficient, and as cost effective as possible. It is important that African people in the diaspora is guaranteed constitutionally rights to reside, right to live, to have access to everything that an African on the continent have access to, in terms of land, in terms of business, in terms of opportunity, in terms of education, in terms of medical care. African people from the diaspora who wants to return should be guaranteed those facilities, those opportunities. If African people on the continent are serious about welcoming the African who are in the diaspora, who have been scattered for the last 500 years, they're serious about it. And I'm sure many of our people are serious about integrating our people into our African societies, into our homeland of Africa. And as such, if they are serious about it, they need to take significant steps to make it possible. Need to provide guarantee the safety of African people and their family and their children and their grandparents. Guarantee them constitutionally the access to land, access to everything that a citizen need to survive. And we can work together and build together, because the Africans in the diaspora have a lot to offer our African brothers and sisters on the continent. We have been here amongst these colonizers for 400 years, and we have learned a lot of their ways. We have gathered a lot of information about them. And that information can be useful, that knowledge and that skill sets that we carry. And some of us have amassed a tremendous amount of wealth that can be used to help rebuild Africa. So with the skills, the wealth, and the willingness to integrate and to live amongst our African family, that is important for us to have as we begin to explore the possibility of Africans living together. I personally support this as a Pan-Africanist. These are very important steps in our reparation struggle, in our Pan-Afrikan Reparation Liberation struggle. That in our engagement with the European nations that enslave our ancestors, the returning to Africa will be a significant part of that process. Returning to Africa, and that is where our African brothers and sisters come into the picture, where they will be needed to step forward to provide us with the land, provide us with the access that we need to return home in a safe and efficient and effective manner. So, and we need it guaranteed constitutionally. Shouldn't we need no worry about returning home, whether we are safe, whether we're going to have any issues with whatever properties we have, or whatever schooling we're going to get and medical treatment we're going to get. No, because we're going to bring resources and skills and knowledge and also technology to help advance our brothers and sisters on the continent. So that is how I see it in terms of I look at it in the context of the reparation movement, the reparative movement of our people. And that's where we have to squarely put this issue of repatriation into African society. And know that, in the Afro-Caribbean, which people call the Caribbean, the African people are very desirous of returning to Africa. Many Africans in America, in the Americas, desire to return home. And I've been watching, I've seen many of the settlements that has been built up especially in the last 5 years. There's been a acceleration of African returning back to Africa to build a better home for themselves, a future for themselves. And this is to be encouraged. This is a good thing. And African people needs to continue to do this. If we have good intentions, if we can inculcate good values in our people, and we keep our expectation in check, knowing that we are actually starting over as a people who have been through hell, not only on the continent, but in the diaspora, and that we've been held back for the last 500 years, and we are now just picking up ourselves and running with this torch, running to rapidly develop our people and develop our continent. and also develop wherever we are in the world. So whatever community where we are the majority, let's develop that too. Because now we are a space age people. We are global people. We can travel back and forth. We got planes. We got all kind of sophisticated transportation now. We can fly from Jamaica to Nigeria. We can fly from Kenya to New York. We can fly from the Congo to Kingston. So we have to embrace the fact that we can build up the Afrobeans, we can build up our local communities where we are and enjoy the best of both worlds. So going black to Africa doesn't mean abandoning where you are in the world today. It doesn't mean that we abandon our home in the Caribbean, our home in North or Central South America. It only means that we expand our opportunities, we expand our options as a people, where we know that we can build industries in Africa with our African brothers, and we can also build industries where we are, and we can source our resources from amongst each other, and we can sell our products and services amongst each other, and we can grow and prosper together. But we need to put legal and constitutional guarantees in place so we all can feel secure and confident in what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? And we do our best to fight against the corrupted minded ones, the one who trying to exploit our situation. On both sides of the continent, of the world, we have exploiters amongst our people. The traitors them that sell us out during our darkest days of enslavement, they still amongst us today. The traitors them. You know what I'm saying? And I know many of our chiefs are apologizing for those traitors. You know what I'm saying? And I acknowledge that and I understand the reason for that. You know what I'm saying? There was a culture at the time that tolerated those things. There was a sense of inhumanity, a sense of inhuman attitude towards human beings. But I'm glad we can see better now. And we can understand that that kind of treachery is wrong then and it is wrong now. But we have to keep repairing. We have to keep building ourselves. We have to keep teaching our children about who they are. Because I am becoming more and more convinced that our condition, our issue is more about our culture, more about our identity, more about who we are as a people, who we are to each other. How are we going to work together? How are we going to continue to build on the culture, build on what we have learned and developed so far to retain the best of our African self today and also recovering the best of what we have lost in our African culture and teach that to our children to fortify them to move forward, to become powerful human beings, to become powerful African, to become powerful representative of African people. So when they go to school and when they graduate from universities, they can become contributors to our development, to our liberation. Not just to become workers for capitalist corporations. Not to come here to reinforce capitalism and to make capitalism better and stronger. We have to know that is our collective security. That's what we need our children to understand. And to know that you can go to Africa, you can learn, you can spend 5-10 years in Africa, you can live the rest of your life in Africa if you want. And you can travel around the world. Because right now, African people are not free to travel as we want. European people can get up and jump on a plane and fly anywhere in the world. These are some of the unfair, some of the imbalance and some of the injustice that we have to face as a people. The humiliation that we face traveling around the world. All these things must stop. We must do our best to break down these barriers, to teach our children, say it's not over yet. And let them know, if this happen to be, if you're born in Africa, if you're born in the Caribbean or Central or South America, you will be humiliated when you travel. You'll be put through some of the most disrespectful treatment only because you come from an African country. They already profiled you. So you have to be prepared for that. And it's because that's how the world has been set up against African people. That's just an example that no one can deny. And if you notice, even the election in America, they demonize the foreigners, they demonize the others, they demonize the African people to make you feel less than, like you are the cause and the source of their problem, so they can unite around making the foreigners the target, the enemy, making African people the enemy. That is how they are framing their electoral campaigns, you know. But that's just an example of how the demonization of a people take place, and how they're constantly demonizing our people. And it relates even right back to the issue of our repatriation to our African continent, where many people are afraid to return to Africa because of the demonizing process. But I'm glad that's been breaking down now. Many of our people are taking the journey and taking the step, and our African family on the continent are welcoming us back home. I've seen many examples of that. I want to rise up those who are participating in this global healing, this reconciliation amongst African families, to break down the misunderstanding, to break down the distortion of our history, and to counter the colonial and narrative, the capitalist imperialist narrative that they've been feeding our people for the last 50 to 60 years about our enslavement. African people were not the one who started the enslavement of our people. We were not the one who built the industry of enslavement on the continent. We were not the one who built the dungeons in Africa. There were no enslavement camp. There was no concentration camp in Africa that African people created for European to come and just accept and just buy. It's like you go into a market and just buy 10 here and 20 there. No, the Europeans set up a system to capture our people, set up a system to house and store our people, set up a system to ship our people out of Africa. It was the Europeans them that did that on the Western, Central, and Southern Africa. The Arab did it in North Africa. And the Muslim them and Arabs them in North Africa, the European them and the Christians and some of the Jews them were involved. Those who follow Judaism were involved in the west coast of Africa. So we need to be clear about that. And many Africans on the continent became an accomplice, became traitors to their own people, and assisted the European in their wicked, inhumane enslavement of African people. So we have to acknowledge that. So I respect those African leaders who want to apologize for those treachery, for those traitors who have betrayed their own people. And many of them themselves became enslaved. Many of them faced the same concentration camp that end up under the whip in North America. So I just want to say, and Central and South America. So I wanted to say, my people, it's not easy, but we got to do it. We got to work through this. I want to thank you so much for listening to this broadcast. This has been episode 33 with Brother Dulani. And Clear Thinking will be coming at you, facing, acknowledging, addressing difficult subjects as we move forward. It is a part of the process. It have to be done. We have to speak the truth. We have to be honest with ourselves, and we have to heal. And this is a part of the reparative process for our people. So thank you once again, my people. Do like, share, and subscribe to this program, and so I can keep coming to you with more Clear Thinking with Brother Dulani. Hotep, Ashe, walk good, my people. Ashe, Unk and Mahat. Walk good. Respect every time.